morning, I'm headed over to Lerna to meet with the tile guy to see if we can possibly find a way to fix some of these drainage issues on these new farms. There's the field where Marty cut about a quarter mile of the neighbor's beans. These projects are a little bit more fun than the ones at home because you're spending the landowner's money, not your own. As you guys may recall from one of our last few days of harvesting soybeans over here in Lerna, we've got a few ponds. Like that one, or that one, possibly that one, maybe that one, or that one. Even that one over there. Unfortunately, the south 100-acre field over here has a lot of low areas that there's really no natural grade to take any kind of surface water off with. You're gonna have to use subsurface methods like drainage pipe. We had a huge hit on yield across the middle. Soybeans are very sensitive to wet roots. They cause a lot of yield loss in the ultimate picture. We're looking to see how we can fix the problems and even assess whether or not these inlets are functioning properly, because there shouldn't be this much dead crop and excessive weeds around low areas that have a tile inlet. We're also having a hard time figuring out how an area like this has an inlet, but an area like that does not have an inlet. To be completely honest with you, it looked like maybe the drainage system out in this field has seen its better days. I would not be surprised if there was not a tile inlet over there that didn't just get worked over at one point in time. Some of these other inlets weren't even in their appropriate location. They were just off in the field, meaning that maybe the tile's been neglected, which visually makes sense. Tile contractor is going to go ahead and try and get a game plan together, assess the situation, and see what the most cost-effective way is to fix the drainage issues out here. Looks like one of our neighbors is going up the road to pick some corn. They've got the 1522 grain cart, which is the next size up from what we have. I think it holds like 1,450 bushels. Hello. Battery on. Locked. While the tractor warms up, we're going to pull the pins out on the wings of this inline ripper so we can fold it up and take it down the road. Looks like that one's already out, but I do know the rest of them are in. I started to do this the other day and then I got sidetracked with something else, so I abandoned the project about a quarter of the way through. We pin the wings down because it helps give the toolbar rigidity. Is it necessary? I don't really know, but we think maybe it helps keep everything even, especially when we're ripping deep in the ground as we're aiming to here. I feel like this tire looks slow. Maybe it's just sitting in a hole. Disappointing to see. High quality slow moving vehicle sign on this one. I didn't realize they offered an automatically wind adjusting slow moving vehicle sign. Must be a new feature. Okay, let's run up the road. Make sure everything is right. Nope, that's reversed. We better switch that before I rip up some pavement. I can tell Marty was involved with the hydraulic line hookup on this one. Okay, that should be remedied. Looks like the jack stands up, tires are aired up. Let's hit the road. Looks like Chris is cleaning out the mower tractor. One quick stop at the main shed because we need one more thing on this tractor. This 9460R is actually the old grain cart tractor. It's been on light work this fall just for the fact that it didn't run a grain cart, and most of our tillage has been done by our other two four-wheel drive tractors. So it's had a pretty easy slate. As you may notice, it is missing an auto steer receiver. And I don't personally have any plans on steering any more than I have to. Word on the street is that after a couple years of major shortages of GPS receivers, they're finally starting to catch up, which means don't overpay for one of these. If supply's ample, people have really been price gouging for the last couple of seasons, charging $5,000 or $6,000 for something that's only worth $2,000 or $3,000. Now this train can finally head east. Hey, there's Lakeland College. I bet this sign right here is coiling up, seeing as I slapped it with the draper a while back. You can see my scratch on there. Let's see what we got. Time to break up some compaction. Huh, here goes nothing. Whoa, that's pulling up chunks. For now, I'm not going to pin the wings down unless I see them start to float up. I don't know that that's a necessary requirement. I will say that I think this 9460R needs a little more weight on it. It's not ballasted enough to deal with the amount of hopping the tractor's doing trying to pull this load. Horsepower is not really an issue, but this bouncing is. I've done a few rounds in the field so far, limbered everything up. I'm going to check and make sure everything's in one piece still and see what kind of depth we're working at. I'm actually taking my measurement a little higher than where the ground level appears to be, because as this tool is working through the field, it's leaving a valley and a ridge. So I want to kind of have a good idea of where we're at compared to baseline. I would say we're going 13 to 14 inches deep. This thing doesn't have John Deere's fancy true set. It's got the old school system. The old lock collar stops. This is how it was previously set. This is what we're going to go with. I think that'll gain us 2 inches. And every inch counts, so we'll do that. It's hard to argue that the true set system is at least not more convenient than this. Although this is pretty simple. If I can get this off, there we go. Oh yeah, she's pulling a lot harder now, but also doing a better job on top, less disturbance. Maybe that was what we were doing wrong all along. The downside to that move was that we went from burning about 1 gallon an acre to 1.5 gallons an acre, just from a few inches in depth. Unless my eyes are deceiving me, I do believe that my wings are starting to float up. However, it looks like there's a lot of weight pressing against my wing tires. Whoa. Well, you said a hard spot. Jeez, she's pulling. Anyways, those wing tires are to help keep the wings from over digging. I may need to pull them off a little bit, raise them up so the wings aren't lifting, because we are going deeper. How does this contraption work? Let's say it involves pulling this pin. Do we want to go there, or do we want to go there? Any guesses? We'll go there. Let's try that one for now. Same thing over here. Maybe that'll take a little bit of the strain off of these tires, because they were squatting pretty good from the weight of the bar sitting down. Oh yeah, that definitely fixed that problem. And by the way, you can tell where I put it in the ground deeper, because it's from here south or to the right. The left is where we had our original settings. Look at the difference in disturbance on the topsoil. This minimal impact on the surface tillage, but subsoil reach and compaction reduction is what we're going for. That looks like we just ran a chisel plow over there and pulverized the entire profile. We're just trying to reach deep and get rid of some problems. Okay, the neighbor's just showing off with his vertical till and how many acres he can cover. He's almost half done with his field, and I'm barely even a fraction into ours. I would speculate that he's probably using less fuel breaker as well. It's not every day when the inlet is perfectly placed in between your passes. One of the funny things about running one of these deep tillage devices is you could practically close your eyes and just listen and be able to pinpoint where exactly the ground is more compacted and where it's already loose. weren't burnt out on tractor rides yet for the season, so they brought me lunch. Looks like Lenny's gonna take up vlogging. Tell the people what's going on. You have anything to add, Allie? She's camera shy. Lenny's not though. He was made for the camera. It's not going to take him long to realize that this is not a very exciting job. He'll be wanting out of here in no time. See, I told you that wouldn't take long. They're already leaving. Leaving an unusual pattern in the middle of the row. Don't know why. Well, that's one heck of a note. This thing's barely got 300 acres on it. How's that already off? Looks like our shank saver is loose and our point is gone. See, this is supposed to have something like that, but it doesn't. However, it is missing a nut. I wonder where that is. It does look like this shank saver is held into the bottom with a groove on the actual tip, the chisel itself. So I'd imagine that that falling off is why this is out of place. Just lose our nut. Here we are 2 rows over. I bet you something like this had something to do with our issue. Look at that. It is hand loose. We would have been losing that one soon. That must somehow fasten into the shank and then tighten in the back. I would expect this thing to have had 1,000+ acres on it before we had any kind of issues, and that was not the case. It is a year old, but it's not been ran across that much ground. What's the likelihood that we can trace this back to the source and find that missing point? Other than being a little breezy outside, it's actually a fairly nice day. Alrighty, this is where we put it in the ground. You can see a very visible difference between the middle shank and the other ones. So somewhere in here it's gotta be. Didn't have to look far. Here it was. That'd be expensive to run through your combine. A shim of some kind. Don't know what that shims. I have no idea what this does. Maybe that? Yeah, that's the right size. Now we just need to find a washer, a lock washer, and a nut. Which I doubt there's any growing on any trees out here. Would you look at that? There's another loose one. And another one. Not hand loose yet, but it has play in it. Oh, let's make that 3. Not even counting the ones we saw a second ago. There's another loose one. I knew there was a reason we had wrenches and a few random bolts in the tractor cab. For the record, this is not to code, but I don't have a washer of the correct size, so we're just going to use a nut as the washer. It's a self-locking nut too. Not that that's helping us at all, but it is self-locking, so it's kind of like a lock washer, even though it's not doing anything. She's on there now. What's the point of a lock washer if you're not even going to cinch it down? Loose. Come on. Loose. Also loose. Like a broken record. Do I even need to say it? It's loose. Makes me worry about what else they could have forgotten to do when they put this thing together. Did they even put blinker fluid in it? Is it safe to take down the road? Who knows? Back in action. It just took me about 8 hours to work 76 acres. This thing reaches deep, but man, does it go slow. The worst part is, we've got another 160 acres over here to work. There's spots along the inrows where I didn't think I was even gonna be able to pull this thing through. It was so tight. Multiple times, I almost killed the tractor in the process. Wonder how hard these wet holes are gonna pull. For as compacted as they look like they'd be, they really didn't pull the tractor down that hard. There's a slight chance of rain tonight, and I'm not planning on working much longer, so I want to go ahead and work these before there's standing water in them. There's gotta be something wrong here. Flood tile, maybe? I used almost a half a tank of diesel fuel just to work, what, 80 acres? That is not the definition of efficiency. That's going to be it for today's tillage misadventures. I'll report back in with you all tomorrow. We'll see what the weather brings. It ended up raining about a half an inch on Saturday early in the morning, as opposed to going out and making a mess trying to finish something when we're not even in a hurry. I just took the weekend off, and it was pretty nice. That short vacation is over, and we're back to work. Almost all of our fall tillage and fertilizer work is pretty much wrapped up. We've got a couple hundred acres of corn stalks to work with the vertical till, which I believe Jeff will finish today. All of our dry fertilizer's on, of course, and I don't believe we have any more anhydrous to apply, so we're in good shape for this year. I couldn't say the same thing last year because at this time, we were still picking corn, and I think we continued on for another 2 weeks doing so. Get out our shiv to check the oil. The 14.9 liter Cummins has plenty of blood in it. All of this paneling is a pain in the rear end in day-to-day use, but when you go to wash this tractor at the end of the season, you're so thankful that they installed those because it doesn't get full of corn stalks like our other tractors. The real silver lining of the season, other than the high yields, is that we don't have to wake up at 1 o'clock in the morning to go rip frozen ground because we didn't get a chance to get it work before the rain set in. You leave these things unattended in the barn for a couple of days and they get lazy. Always got to stand them back up. And no, we're not just getting this out for fun. We're taking this over to Lerna where the inline ripper's parked. This tractor is the only machine on our farm that per hour used spends more time at the fuel tank than the S780 combine. Surely Deere could have put like a hook on this or something so you don't have to manhandle the hose up. Sorry, I needed both hands for that one. Looks like the neighbors are picking corn to the south this morning. I believe that they're pretty close to done. That's normally one of the last fields they pick. Relatively speaking, it is getting to the point in the year where a lot of fields have been harvested. There's really not that many remaining to be picked or cut. Some farming operations move a little quicker, others move a little slower. That doesn't really necessarily mean that one's better than the other. People just kind of have their own pace at moving through their crop. That is also determined based on working hours and, of course, harvesting equipment or the ratio of equipment to the acreage. Like I said many times, we have quite a bit of equipment versus what we farm and a lot of on-farm storage, so we can zip through our crop pretty fast. Full of fuel and ready to go join the inline ripper over at Lerna. I know some of you are probably curious why I'm taking this disc ripper over when the inline ripper is supposed to be a comparable tool and accomplish similar goals. I will explain that all in a little bit. There is good intent with what we're doing here. Once Jeff gets out of our way, we're gonna head east. It took significantly longer to get over here than I was initially planning on. The combination of the width of the tires on this tractor, the narrow nature of the roads we were traveling on, especially the lack of a shoulder, and the unusual surplus of cars meant I had to stop quite a bit. Needless to say, that was exactly how I was expecting to start my Monday. It was just fitting. Unlike the inline ripper where we're going 14 plus inches in the ground, aiming to do maybe 8 to 9 inches of soil movement here. Larry? Doesn't feel like I'm even pulling anything right now. Let's go see how we're doing. Doesn't really look like we're running these discs in the ground all that much, so I'm gonna pull the probe out and see the depth. Definitely still some moisture in the soil from the rain. Let's find the bottom of that hard pan. Pull her out. That's not bad. I may screw it in a bit more. Check one more time. What is that? 8 inches? The initial goal was to work all this over here with the inline ripper. Of course, you guys may have mentioned, well, we haven't put any anhydrous on here. This is a completely different management strategy. The landowner we work with very actively on this farm prefers spring nitrogen, specifically in the form of 32% with either a weed and feed up front to fertilize while we put a burn down on, and of course a side dress pass. They're not a fan of the anhydrous. They think it's very corrosive, not only on equipment, but on the soil profile, the microorganisms out there, and it's just not reliable. That being said, there has been a development that we want to run this because we're going to do some surface drainage work and we need loose soil. And loose soil is what this thing specializes in. Alrighty, she's about an inch deeper in the ground, give or take a tenth of an inch or so. We're going to run back and forth. We've got 100 acres here that we plan on doing surface drainage work with a scraper. So we want to get 6, 8, maybe even 9 inches of loose dirt up top. So where we need to make cuts, we don't have to drag out this compacted topsoil and soybean stubble. We mix it all together and hopefully streamline the surface shaping process. I can't tell if I put it in the ground deeper or if I accidentally raise it out because it seems like it's pulling easier now. Extreme number of ponds out in this field from an inability for the subsurface drainage to keep up, we have a pretty terrible yield compared to the rest of our soybeans. This farm in particular was actually close to the bottom of our list across all of our acres. It only made 65. We were not happy with those yields, and neither was the landlord. Those yields weren't the direct fault of anyone, although we probably could have lucked out and had a better day to plant these crops and not had the emergence issues. Regardless of that, we still lost a big chunk of our average productivity because of all of the drainage issues. And we think that we can fix them, or at least alleviate them enough to make a positive financial impact on the bottom line of this farm. A couple of weeks ago, the landowner came out here with a side-by-side and surveyed this farm to get a topographic analysis of the way the land lays and the water flows. The results were very surprising. We thought that this farm sits in a natural low and there was no way for the water to get out, but based on the output from the program he used on his topograph, we can actually do quite a bit of surface shaping with a scraper and move a lot of water out to the southeast corner of the farm. Although it will take quite a few man hours and tractor hours with a scraper to do all the cutting and filling we need, it is still by far and away more financially efficient than subsurface drainage. We will use additional subsurface tile if we deem an area needs help. However, we're going to try to alleviate as much ponding with a scraper. I'm not going to go too much into the details just because it's still kind of a new system to me. It will not be our tractor doing it. The landowner has his own red quad track, and hopefully we can run it and do the surface work out here. He estimated that he may cover 3 to 4 acres per hour. 100-acre field, that's 25 plus man hours of scraping. But if we can bring up even our average on soybeans, 10 bushels per acre. 10 bushels per acre across 100 acres is 1,000 bushels of soybeans. 1,000 times 14 is $14,000. You multiply that over many years of having a positive impact on your crop, and this investment will look pretty good. Speaking of investments that look pretty good, this 9620R and this disc ripper are just playing with this dirt. If you all can't tell just from looking at it, this is extremely good dirt. We're estimating that we have 2 to 3 foot of topsoil in most locations except for the hills. This 9620R is just something else. It is a complete horse out here. It is playing with this disc ripper right now. We're running 10 miles an hour. Now we're only working 8 to 9 inches in the ground, but still, that's impressive nonetheless. It does start to pull down as we get into these darker low-lying soils, typically more compaction, and it's just a heavier soil in general. One of the added perks of running this disc ripper out here is we actually get an opportunity to bury some of those pesky weed seeds from the weeds that were prevalent in the water damaged areas of the field. Mother Nature always finds a way. There's not going to be barren ground. If the crops are not growing there, weeds will find a way to grow. In this instance, we're burying some cucumber seeds. Hopefully by putting them 6, 7, or 8 inches in the ground, it either delays their germination, spreads it out so they're easier to control. The best case scenario would be that it puts it all the way in the ground and they rot over time and never amount to anything. over here, these nice little crackers. And if I make it to 11 o'clock without eating them, it'll be a miracle. Forget who can cover the most ground or who has the newest equipment. The most impressive farmers are the ones who actually make their lunch last until lunch and they don't eat it as a mid-morning snack. We're 2/3 of the way across the field, but we do have to go back and work all the alternate rows that I skipped. For the longest time, I always thought that farmers who skipped a pass as they did tillage like this were crazy. It actually makes perfect sense because this implement is only so wide, the tractor can only turn so sharply, and I have to cut it violently to make it back on this next pass. Why would you put all that stress on your equipment to make that tight turn when you could just skip around and come back and lessen the load on everything? And the pattern actually looks pretty cool while you're doing it. Needless to say, we are covering a significantly larger amount of acres than we were the other day with the inline ripper and the 9460R. This tractor does have 160 more rated horsepower under the hood, which does help our cause a little bit. Tillage is a little more fun when you're doing 25 acres an hour as opposed to 10. Finish this field. The inline ripper would only have about 40 acres done at this point. So I'm glad we brought this over to disturb the topsoil. Hopefully we get that scraper pan in here soon to do some shaping. We've got a long haul to the next field. Whew, it's a miracle we made it that far. That was a long quarter of a mile. Man, I love daylight savings time. Said no one ever. It's just a shade after 4 o'clock and the sun will be setting within the hour. Gotta enjoy that. It's amazing how much easier lighter soils pull versus darker soils. Doing an easy 10.5 miles an hour, I've got my transmission speed target set to 11. Just cooking through this field right now. I didn't really have any intentions of working this field, but I'm here, I'm covering good ground. Might as well turn it over so it dries out quicker in the spring so we can get our corn planted early, and ultimately maybe it'll yield pretty well. Wow, we are blessed with one heck of a sunset tonight here in central Illinois. Fun fact about the Lerna area where we are right now that someone pointed out that maybe I should mention, other than these fields we're working on today, Lerna, Illinois is also home to the Lincoln Log Cabin, which was one of Abe Lincoln's stomping grounds in the 1800s, way before he ever became president. But it's pretty neat to have such an iconic figure of the United States of America have roots traced so close to where we farm. You never know. Honest Abe could have cut down trees out on these farms. There's some bucks out frolicking in the meadow. He's still hanging out along this fence line. Oh, makes sense now. There's women involved. I bet those two bucks are trying to do a little mating under the moonlight. Lights are on, but we are almost done with this field, so it shouldn't be much longer. That's a majestic skyline out there. Wow. I had to stop and get a picture. There was really no other choice. Wow. That is magnificent. They're everywhere. You want to have a deer off? My deer's cooler than yours. This is very likely to be the last field of tillage for this 9620R and 2720 disc ripper this season. That'll do it for this evening. After dark, I'd really prefer just to take my truck home and get the tractor later, but I don't have a truck here, so I either take the tractor home or I walk, and that's a pretty easy choice. Time to upset some motorists. There's not a single time of day where this 9620R is convenient to meet on the road. You add in the LED lights on, it's just a recipe for anger. That's not even to mention my reckless abandon for common decency on the roadway. I'm just kidding. I'm a very courteous driver. I even dim my lights when I meet people. Let's get this show on the road. Made it back to the farm, barely. The speed at which this light subsides from flashing determines how quickly I gotta go home. There we go. Quitting time. Anywho, that's enough for my tillage adventures for the video. I do greatly appreciate you all tuning in. I hope to see you all in the next episode, but until then, make sure you like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and comment down below if you have any questions. You know I love to talk about farming. Have a great day, everyone. Peace!